Hello, my name is Jack Connors, and I am starting a new series where I will take two cinematic masterpieces and try and break them apart as best as possible. Today, we will begin with the films
A Dark Knight
and while both these films were made in polar opposite different time periods, both their directors are very infamous. The late great Billy Wilder spent over 5 decades in the film industry, and most of it as a director, in fact. With his new exciting ideas on how to bring characters to life, he changed the way that films were directed in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, especially with his big hit, Double Indemnity. He won countless awards during his time period in Hollywood, similarly to Christopher Nolan, who directed The Dark Knight. Nolan is a much more modern director, taking Hollywood by storm with hits like the Batman trilogy, Interstellar, and most recently, his film Tenet, which has scenes that are actually filmed in reverse to make the cinematography better. Now, besides the fact that both of these directors are extremely talented and successful, they don't have much in common. Or do they? In both the films The Dark Knight and Double Indemnity, the idea of a femme fatale is pivotal in the plot and the character development. Now, you might be thinking, well, what is this femme fatale thing? Well, let me tell you. The femme fatale is a character that is oftentimes a female, who is either mysterious, beautiful, or seductive, and uses these characteristics to charm or fool others. That often leads these other characters into compromising or deadly traps. The idea of a femme fatale did not exist until the mid-40s, because at the time, a female character could not be a main character. They oftentimes had to fill the housewife role that had existed for years before. That was until directors like Billy Wilder saw an opportunity. So, although the Hollywood stereotype of the average housewife was a staple throughout the 30s and into the early 40s, the introduction of noir in the late 40s changed his point of view that had once existed and turned it on its head, adding in mystery, evil, and most importantly, a femme fatale, which is instrumental in the stairway scene where Walter first meets Phyllis in the film Double Indemnity. This scene in particular stood out in the film because the femme fatale is beginning right from the start when Walter first lays his eyes on Phyllis. The scene begins with Walter walking in on Phyllis, talking to her from the top of the stairs. In this scene, Walter is looking up at the stairwell awaiting Phyllis to come out of the dark. This is an amazing beginning because Phyllis, who later antagonizes Walter to kill her husband, begins in the dark, which is the way her personality is portrayed in the film. She then comes out of the shadow with the towel and emerges from the darkness into the light, similarly to a hero coming into a movie to save the day, or in this case, as a beautiful woman that Walter cannot get off his mind. This is the beginning to the idea of the femme fatale because she is emerging in its shower towel, which is overtly revealing and will later play a role as he is now extremely attracted to her. The added use of a tiny scoreboard and Phyllis emerges from the darkness truly sets the scene, and along with the way the director uses a low-angle shot to portray that she now has all the power and controls Walter. The other thing that sticks out in this scene are the metal bars that are the stairs. These are not normal railings in any sense. They look similar to prison bars, which are caging and locking Phyllis inside. Due to this, Phyllis feels the attention that Walter is giving her and craves it, because it's something that her husband has not given her in a very long time. Walter goes and enters the living room to await her arrival, and a diegetic monologue sets in. He says, "I was not interested in goldfish, or in auto renewals, or on Mrs. Dietrichson, or his daughter Lola. I was thinking about the dame upstairs, and the way that she had looked at me, and I wanted to see her again without that silly staircase between us." After the monologue ends, Phyllis appears wearing a dress that is still being buttoned, further adding to the idea of the femme fatale. She goes over the mirror and checks her makeup, and then sits down in a provocative way. The change in makeup suggests, according to the Progressive Portrayal of Women article, that she is putting on, quote, putting on her face, end quote, to lure Walter into a sordid disguise. She directs the conversation eventually. Walter begins to hit on her, and she pretends to play it off. Lastly, just before he leaves, Walter is invited back to the house to sign insurance papers when her husband will be home, though. But it's obvious that this is just an excuse. While there are many other films that use the style of femme fatale, the use of the femme fatale in the film The Dark Knight will have you seeing it in a new light. Now, while the Joker is not a female, as we stated earlier, a femme fatale character can be male as well. They just must embody the characteristics of a femme fatale. Instead of using his sexuality like Phyllis did in Double Indemnity, the Joker uses his mysteriousness and the Batman's overall fear of his own destructive powers against him. He uses this to his advantage by throwing the Batman off by saying things like, "I don't want to kill you. What would I do without you?" Later on in the scene, he's willing to take hit after hit from Batman so that he just may further his agenda and get his point across inside the Batman's head. He's doing his best to string the Batman along until he drops bomb information about Rachel. He gave the Batman opposite person's addresses so that the Bat would forever feel as if he failed, and that Harvey would live without his bride forever. It's not a coincidence that he does this, because yet again it's reinforcing the idea of his own mysteriousness and craziness, which he uses to send Batman into a trap, making him by definition a femme fatale character. So why is this all important? Because without directors like Billy Wilder or films like Double Indemnity, we would never be able to understand noir in the way that we do today. Films would be completely different, and it's quite possible that films like The Dark Knight never would have happened. So we owe it all to these movies.